demanding respect and commanding respect, those words get tossed around and they get confused. But commanding respect is by doing what you say you're going to do and being who you say you're going to be, and then drawing others in because of your consistency. And that is how you command respect.
Welcome back to another episode of the No Half Cakes podcast. I am super pumped to share this guest with you today. This is a man who I have seen light himself on fire over and over again with discipline and diligence and discipleship. A man who is honorable, who honors other people, who is not afraid to go first, who is all about legacy and family and doing the right thing, who's got core values in his family, in his business. Just a man who is a great example of what it means to be a man, businessman, a family man, who really just exemplifies all the things that I'm about here inside the No Half Cakes zone. Man, it is an honor to introduce you to Travis Terrebonne. Travis, thank you so much for being here. I am really pumped to have this conversation, man.
Hey, man, I appreciate that. Real recognizes real. That's something I use on a daily basis. And I'm at a point in my life at 42 years old that I'm not interested in half cake relationships. And so you and I getting on a podcast video call, has probably been a long time coming. I think there's been a moment where we both pursued each other. And so I think God recognizes that relationship and provides the opportunities. So man, I'm super pumped. I honor you for everything that you are and do. I hope I can live up to that introduction.
I certainly know that you will, man. You've been a shining example, like I said, of someone who's got the family values and the core values in business and in their house. I'm curious if you could take me back a little bit and kind of where that started from. How did you really step into that?
Yeah, so it's an interesting story. I can speak on a million different topics, like I'm sure you can: business, relational. I mean, just spiritual. Yesterday, I did a podcast, and it was business oriented, but I ended up ultimately giving my testimony, and that's one thing that a mutual mentorship funnel that we both share is down from Pastor Keith Craft through Steve Weatherford, Chris Vester, and all these guys that we are in alignment with. I've learned is that the strongest story we can tell is our testimony. So for me, I'll flip the script a little bit and maybe sprinkle in a little business here and there, but for the most part, man, I'm 42. I'm from South Louisiana, a little town called La Rose. I've been a small town boy my whole life. I am a product of a father wound. My dad wasn't around for the vast majority of my childhood. My parents got divorced at 7 years. I was 7 years old, and I saw some stuff, man. I've heard testimonies and I've heard some doom and gloom. So I'm not here to tell you I lived some traumatic childhood, but I'm realizing now with kids of my own how how difficult a father wound can be to overcome, and even more so to use as a tool. And so I grew up a single mom, and then I have one brother who's a little younger than me, 3 years younger than me. We're pretty close. He works for my company and lives right down the street, and so our kids are each other's. I'm his kids as we call it parent in French, which means godfather, and he is my kid's godfather as well. So, yeah, childhood, man, single mom. Insert my stepdad. Probably, I think I was 13 years old when he married my mom, and he was only 21. And so there was a short age gap at that time. 13 to 21 was boy and man. So that was all I needed to hear. And then my mom did such an amazing job. And I'll tie this into the story later of, realizing that in order for our family unit to work, she could not take our side in front of him and had to maintain that parental hierarchy as a marriage. I wasn't at that time in my life, it was not, I didn't have exemplified for me God, marriage, children. It was just marriage, children. And so I lived in a small little trailer, mobile home growing up. And in that process, the one part that my mom really probably doesn't even know to this day, unless she watches the podcast that I've been on or where I give my testimony, was that that shaped me. The fact that she would never argue with my stepdad in terms of what his rules were, even though he was an iron fist guy, until they were in the bedroom at night behind closed doors. Little beknown to her, I heard her saying, "Hey, I don't like the way you discussed or talked to the boys or addressed that or handled this." At the time, it helped me build resentment towards my stepdad, but now it's turned into an all new appreciation for a mom honoring her marriage in front of her children and then honoring her children behind closed doors with her marriage. So my stepdad comes in, rule with the iron fist guy, really taught me everything I needed to know about perseverance, work. You know, he suffered from a father and mother wound as well. Didn't really give me a fathership mentor because he was 21 years old, but he was there. He was a provider. He was a protector. And so I was able to develop that skill pretty much right away. And so the person in my life who was most influential in the way that I think, move, operate, and act now is my great grandfather, who passed away at 96 during COVID. Very successful oil field tycoon, led the singing in church, and everywhere he went, he commanded respect. He was the thermostat in every room that he walked into. He was respected. He gave the family advice. I mean, he was the patriarch of our entire family. And so when he passed away in 2020, I can't even talk about him without getting emotional. Sorry. But when he passed away in 2020, that role inevitably became mine as the patriarch of our family. And so he was so influential in my life, man. He taught me how to be a man. And he taught me some ways not to act, you know. So I learned a lot from him. And then growing up, man, I just didn't know both sides of my family are tarnished with divorce, adultery. I mean, it's almost every single marriage on both sides of my family. There's no longevity. There's no legacy. You know, it's just, I love my family to death, but you know, that's something that I'm pride myself in now, is self-awareness. Is you got to call a spade, and our family just didn't exemplify a kingdom relationship or building legacy, unless it was through my great grandfather. So I got married at a young age, basically just this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to get married, get a job, and then shortly after that, I got my young wife pregnant, and then had to become an entrepreneur by default, because I wanted to be home. I wanted to support her. I wanted to support her career endeavors, which was to own a restaurant. Crazy. Do not do that. And anybody, Jim owns a restaurant, but unless you're willing to be married to it at the time, it just wasn't for me. Probably never be for me. But she wanted to be in a restaurant business while having a baby. I quit my job, immediately deployed myself into leadership in the restaurant role. And so started doing mechanic work, diesel mechanic work at night and on weekends, because that was my trade. And so when I became successful, it literally happened overnight. Now, at the time, it would have been worldly success. Monetary success came to me so fast, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I went from my first year in business, I did like 200 grand. Year 2, I did 650. Year 3, 2.8 million. Year 4, 4.5 million. I had no idea what I was doing. One of the major companies in my industry went public. Hired all of their employees that didn't want to go public. So I'm 60 employees deep, $5-6 million company, and I got no idea what I'm doing. All I'm doing is thinking with the wrong head, taking clients out and entertaining them. I've influence, I got money, I got power, I have everything, but I got a humongous heart wound, a humongous God-sized hole in my heart, a humongous father wound, no ability to delay gratification, no sense of spirit, no sense of legacy. I believed, but I wasn't a follower, and my life just downward spiraled. Committed adultery. At that time, I had my daughter was 6 years old, and I ruined our life. Those poor decisions just I wounded my daughter at that time, and so I wounded my ex-wife, and just wasn't a prophet, priest, king, or warrior in any way. And so that marriage ended. I copped out through divorce like a wuss, and then began to rebuild my life. Realized, holy crap, this is all the things that I'm not. It happened in 2016. And then late in 2016, when I really wasn't looking for a relationship, I was looking for some companionship. Or maybe I don't know what the hell I was looking for, but Leslie, my current wife, wandered into my life through Tinder, believe it or not, looking for somebody to talk to. She swipes right, I swipe right. She asks, "What the hell are you doing on Tinder? I thought you were married." So then I asked her the same question. Both of us recently divorced. And so we began a companionship, which has led to a pretty amazing, going to be 8-year relationship, 7 years married. And we have a great blended and blessed family. I've got a 17-year-old senior in high school daughter named Riley, who is every great part of me, and maybe a few of my bad, and every great part of her mother. I have a great relationship with my ex-wife now. She's got a great man in her life. I got a 10-year-old son who is my best friend. I got my stepchildren. I have a Sebastian, which is about to be 22 years old, who made us grandparents last year. Baby Weston is 1. And then I've got a firecracker of a stepdaughter named Sloan, who is, I describe her a lot as the kid you wish you were in high school. She's just involved in everything. She knows no enemies, super outgoing. But, we got a blended and blessed family. And so the last part I'll talk about in my testimony is in 2021. So I'm a product of a weight loss surgery. I was about 360 pounds of morbid obesity and pain up until 2010. And then by 2013, I was 160 pounds of skin and bones, still hated myself, still didn't want to take my shirt off in public, still walked around with shame and guilt. And so I'm like, all right, I got to get some muscles. I got to get jacked. So what's the first thing you do? You get on Instagram and run across a guy by the name of Steve Weatherford, who we both know and love. He was a punter for the New Orleans Saints. I've been a sports fan my whole life. The Saints are my hometown. So I'm following this guy, and he's jacked. I mean, can't argue that the dude's not jacked. And so when I noticed that his bicep vein was bigger than my bicep, I'm like, okay, well, that's possible. Let me get on his program. And so I do Armageddon, which is crazy because we're doing it again right now. I do Armageddon, and I'm following him, and he kind of almost disappears from social media around that time, and then comes back completely consumed with the Holy Spirit, revitalized his entire life. And so I'm still following him at that time, and I'm sitting in the gym, wrapping up this bicep program of 12 weeks, crying on the weights because of a post he put about his testimony. And so what's the natural thing to do? You prompted in the beginning that I'm not afraid to go first. So the natural thing is I'm just going to DM this guy, So I DM him. He's like, hey, I'm starting a program called Man Academy. We're looking for 20 entrepreneurs. Submit a video. My amazing right-hand man, Piercy, will reach out to you. And so I'm on a beach in Punta Cana in July of 22. celebrating my wife's birthday. That's what I got her for a birthday trip. And I'm in beautiful paradise. And so I finally tell her in that moment, babe, I'm broken. Like I'm broken. You don't know this, but I'm dying to be closer to God. Like I know we have some financial success, we have some fruit in our life, but both of us are a product of a father wound. I've just never healed that. I am pursuing to join this program led by Steve Weatherford. And she's like, who? What? What is wrong? What do you mean? We're on a beach in Punta Cana, like having drinks, bikinis. Look at us. We look great. We feel great. Life's great. And I'm like, nah, I'm not great. You know, I put on a pretty big facade, and you band-aided a lot of broken things in my life, but they're not your responsibility to heal. And so I'm asking for your support. I'm going to put $10,000 into this program. I'm going to give my life to Christ for a year and see what happens. And she at first was like, 10 grand? Are you crazy? Like, just no way. And so she gives me her blessing overnight. I asked for it. The next day, I'm on a phone call with Pierce, again on the beach in Punta Cana, crying about my father wound. I'm like, man, I want my tribe. You know, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a bucket filler. Like, I can make it rain. Can't keep the bucket fill. I don't finish anything. I drop off my crazy, audacious, harebrained, visionary ideas to my underdeveloped staff and then get pissed off when they don't deliver the product. And I got some issues. And Pierce is like, after a long pause, he's like, this program was tailor made for you. So we'd love to have you. So a month and a half later, I'm in Frisco. I go first to give my testimony. And here I go again. I'm up there crying in front of 19 other entrepreneurs because my mindset was, God, I'm here. Like, I'm going all in. I'm getting completely undressed. I'm getting completely naked. And if I'm going to heal this, I can't surround myself with a better environment and a better group of men. And so Steve Weatherford, Keith Craft, Josh Craft, Chris Vester, all of these guys at the front of the room, and 19 guys that are my brothers were in that room. And when I gave my testimony, oh my God, they just started loving on me from that day forward. And it's been an amazing whirlwind. I've just rediscovered myself as a person, a Christian, a brother, a friend, a confidant, an entrepreneur, a husband, a father, a daddy. I mean, in every area, I'm completely transformed. Glory be to God that the sanctification is a process. So I'm a work in process. I'm not by no means perfect, but I love the journey I'm on. It links me up with people like you. We have now, I mean, so many things have changed. Our businesses have changed names. We've moved towns. We're in the process of moving from our dream home to go and start over in another town. Our kids have been moved out of public school into Christian private school. I mean, man, we sow into our church. I lead the men's ministry there. I lead a men's Bible study here. Faith, family, finance, and fitness is my whole life, and I owe a lot of it to Steve and the way he transformed his life and put himself out there, man. And I don't believe in coincidences. Josh Craft coined the phrase, there's no Hebrew translation for the word coincidence. And so I think everything happens for a reason. And I don't know how long that took, but that's like the 6-minute version or 18-minute version of my testimony. I could go on for hours about the little nooks and crannies of it, but I stand before you today, a broken shell of a man transformed by the blood of Jesus. And I'm a God-breathed spirit living in sinful flesh that I've been working to chisel away and grow for the last probably 2 years now, and very thankful for what God done in my life.
That's thank you for sharing that. That's a lot of vulnerability. B, just it's an amazing example of what really happens when you truly pursue meaningful success. And like you said there a couple times, you know, in the initial one, when your businesses were super successful, that was what most people equate to success. Then you're on the beach, drinking drinks surrounded by bikinis. That's what most people think is success. but none of those really were successful when you sat down and think about it until you yourself, right? You feel that sense of wholeness. And I think that only comes from, really leaning into the things that the wounds we have, the relationships that we don't have, the real, true, meaningful parts of success, which, I think the more vulnerable and transparent that you can be and the more willing you are to kind of share that, just like, Steve and Steve was an example for me too. Right when I had my no half cakes experience, it was Steve who I found also through Instagram, ironically, or maybe not ironically, no coincidences. Steve as well, I saw a definition of what was possible, and for me, seeing a definition of what's possible made me change my perspective, right? So it was like, all right, cool, maybe what I'm doing right now isn't truly successful, and there's another way to live your life. And I saw that example of what was possible, and the Steve from now is a much different version than he was 4 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And that gives me encouragement to see where are we in 4 years from now. I think that speed exponentially increases as we continue to surround ourselves in deeper relationships, to expose ourselves to more transparency and vulnerability, to have conversations like these, and that idea excites me. And I think it really does take a lot of people to step up and be openly vulnerable and to share those things and to share, hey, this definition of success that you think you want, right? The money, the house, the car, like that stuff is cool. And I'm not saying that's bad by any means, but that should be a byproduct of your standards that you set for yourself and your relationships and your values. You can still have all that stuff, but it shouldn't be the primary focus, right? That shouldn't be what you're pursuing first. Yeah, man. So I honor you for going through all that. That's a lot to go through, and it's a lot to share. I'm curious, kind of, how does that impact your relationship now with your kids?
So I was gonna say, parlaying off of what you just mentioned, the two scriptures that come to mind is, you know, I'm sorry, who can be trusted with little can be trusted with much, and so, and also to whom much is given, much is required. And so, you know, there are going to be times, and I would say most every successful person's life, where you'll be given much. It's the answering the call that most people fail. There's not a we live in a world right now where abundance is everywhere. We truly live in a world where, especially over the next 5 years, like, one of my missions is for young men. 50-60% of men have a father wound from an absent father. The crazy part about it is the other 40% have a father wound from a present father. As a dad, that's my message to dads out there. Whether you're involved or not involved, whether you're loving or not loving, whether you're intentional or not intentional, caring, not caring, harsh, not harsh, you are going to wound your kids. The capacity and the depth of that wound is determined upon the resilience in which you build into them. So I know that I'll give you an example on what I'm talking about when you talk about my kids. So I was morbidly obese. I had the weight loss surgery because it was a cheap way out. It was a cop out because I couldn't put in the work. I wasn't disciplined. I could name you 100 medical issues under the sun. That's all excuses. So at the end of the day, my daughter was born in 2006. I didn't have the weight loss surgery until 2010. I didn't become health conscious until 2014, 13, 14, somewhere around in there. So I was still a fat guy living in a skinny guy's body because my habits said that I was fat. My daughter turned out to be overweight. Well, guess what? She watched me be overweight in a fat body for the first 5 years of her life. Then she watched me be overweight in a skinny guy's body for the next 4 years. So she's 9 years old. At that point, her opinion of what daddy is everything to her, everything to every kid. So if daddy's overweight, and if daddy eats cake all the time, and if daddy drinks 4 sodas a day, and if daddy smokes cigarettes and weed and drinks beer, why are we surprised when our kids do that? Why are we surprised when our kids become overweight? So the idea is that she was 9 or 8. I'm sorry. She's 17 now. In July, she'll be 18. I have been physically, mentally, spiritually transforming myself from the halfway point in her life to now. So she has seen me change, transform in every area. My body, I'm in the gym every single day. I predominantly eat meal prep food. I do not drink sodas, maybe once a quarter at a family's house. They wake up every day and I am in the Bible on my couch. We talk scripture, we pray at night, we think legacy. Well, guess what? None of that transformation healed her. It healed me. So the wounds that I put on her, even though I've spent more time rectifying them, she still has wounds. So the idea there is she's seen me live life the right way more than she's seen me live life the wrong way, but yet she's still wounded. So my intentionality now is, man, kids do not give a crap what you say. They don't care about what you got to say. What are you going to do? What are they going to see you do? And so now I realize that when I decide I don't want to get up at 5:30, when my kids get up at 6:30, I don't want them to see a closed bedroom door. I want them to see an open Bible. And so, now I'm at 42. When I say grace and pray with my family, I still pray in my great-grandfather's cadence. I pray in his tonality. I pray the words he says. I finish and start and finish the prayer the way he did it. I want my kids, my legacy has nothing to do with monetary value. I want my kids to pray with their kids and to tell their kids, I pray like this because daddy prayed like this. That is it for me. And I am obedient this way because my daddy was obedient this way. I work out because my daddy worked out. I'm a good steward of finances because my daddy was a good steward of finances. Man, our kids are so resilient that while we can fail them and wound them for half of their life, we serve a God of the here on out. We don't serve a God of what we did in the past. We serve a God of here on out. When we fail and we come to the Lord, he says, come to me, come to daddy. Our kids are the exact same way with us. You could be serving a 50-year prison sentence. Your kids will go in the schoolyard and say, my daddy could beat up your daddy. We're their hero, and we're also the person that wounds them the most. We shape their identity. We shape their mentality. We shape their discipline. And so now my life is dedicated, my actions are dedicated to building that legacy through action. I want them to see me do it because I was a talker in the majority of their young life, and I didn't do it. I just said it. So that's kind of how I approach the intentionality of fatherhood.
That's so good. I want to touch on something else there too, because, talking about wounding your child, that idea I think sounds scary for a lot of people. And I think the natural inclination is you wouldn't want to do that, right? Nobody wants to do that. So, I think it probably causes a lot of people into inaction.
Yeah.
Because you're like, well, if I don't do anything extreme, I can't wound him, right? Which in and of itself, now you're settling for less. You're settling for average. You're settling for a very mundane life where nothing happens, right? You don't leave your legacy. You leave nothing.
That's right.
So I think you have to get over the fact that there's going to be a wound in some way, shape, or form, but that doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing.
That's right. No.
Right. I think all of us have wounds in our life. You've spoken on before. I've spoken on here lots of times. but those wounds give us perspective. They give us something to feel from. And I think it's important to understand that it's okay to live your life in a way that is a little messy sometimes, right? And you can't hide that.
Yeah.
Because I think if we hide that, we're not equipping them either to deal with it in their own life. Like, to me, when I hear that, I think if you try and live your life in a way that you don't cause any collateral damage along the way, and not that you should try and cause damage, right? But life sometimes is messy and things happen, and we work it out in real time. You got to also equip them with the ability to have something to lean on, right? When they get further and further in their life and they go out into the world on their own, and they're going to get into situations where, stuff happens, they're going to need to know, hey, when I'm in this situation of pain, of difficulty, what do I lean on? And I think, in your case, you've given your kids an example of, hey, you can make some mistakes. You can do this or that. You can be in a bad spot. Doesn't mean you have to stay there.
That's right.
And they see you going through the transformation. They see you putting in the work. And I think it gives them the example of, all right, cool. When this happens, that's how you pivot. That's how you adjust. That's what you lean on. It gives them those core values.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I would say, the fear of living, I'm not picking on other men. I don't know what kind of audience watches the podcast, but there's multiple types of husbands, fathers, leaders, daddies. What's going to happen if you don't live life unbridled? And I think you used the term messy, which I totally get that. But if you live a bridled lifestyle, and you're constantly afraid of hurting your kids, wounding your kids, or putting them in a bad situation, you are mitigating their opportunity to overcome adversity. They don't get to see you wade through the muck and keep pushing forward. So they don't develop that skill. And so what's going to happen is they're going to seek out some muck for themselves if they don't get to see what happens when dad goes through it. Then that's not what we want. The second part is they can become, especially our sons, they can become a doormat. They're a husband who just, every single decision, the husband, oh, I got to ask my wife. Or, hey, man, can you come out and hang out? Well, let me ask my wife. There's a right and wrong way to do that. I'm going to ask my wife because I honor my wife, and our relationship is a covenant relationship, and I honor her opinion, and I want to be upfront with her. But if you can't make a simple decision because your wife is the decision maker, and your kids see that the authority in the home comes from mom, that is not her role. Her role is to provide a nurturing environment where kids can grow. So what I'm saying is when you say you don't make the grade, go to your room or go do laundry or clean up, or because you wrote with the crayon on the wall, I'm going to put you on your knees or I'm going to punish you. That's a wound. You're wounding your kid. It's mom's job to nurture sometimes. But if as the dad, all we do is get home and let mom handle the disciplinary actions, let mom pay the bills, and we feel like our job is just to go out, make a check, sit on the couch, watch football with our hand in our pants and drink a 6-pack of beer, man, that's the deepest wound you could put on your kid, because they'll become that. We become what's modeled for us. Man, there's no accident why I was a POS, a piece of crap, when I was a young man. It was modeled for me. I failed. It was my fail-safe. I went right back to it when adversity struck. The minute adversity struck, which adversity can be early success. A lot of people don't view success as adversity, but if it comes prematurely, it is adversity. It is muck. You don't know what to do with that success. So you end up you go back to what was modeled. So guys, you're raising daughters, model the man that you want them to look for. Your daughters are inevitably going to find a man they feel comfortable with. And if you're a douche and you're a freaking dictator and a tyrant, well, don't get upset when your son-in-law is a jerk, because they seek out either exactly what you are or the polar opposite. So if you're a tyrant in the home, there's a 99% chance your daughter's going to marry a tyrant or a doormat. And you're going to be leading your daughter because her husband's a douche, or you're going to be repairing your daughter because he's a dick. Sorry, you could bleep that out. But either way, it's going to happen. So, sons, I want, I was a tyrant. Most of my adult life, I was a tyrant the way I communicated with people because I was talked to like a dog. So when I was a tyrant, I don't want my son to become a tyrant. Last story I'll say on that is my kids love sports. I love sports. I built a basketball court in my front yard. It's like a 6-acre front yard. And where I poured the concrete slab, the guy who poured the slab asked me right before he poured the concrete, "Hey, what is that window right there?" I was like, "Oh, that's my master bedroom." He's like, "Do you realize you're putting a basketball court right outside your master bedroom window?" And I'm like, I know it's stupid, but this is where I want it. This is the spot where it's out of the way. Built the basketball court, bring the sport court in, put the goal up. And about 2 months later, on a Saturday morning, I'm in bed, sleeping in with mama. We're having bread, coffee, and breakfast in bed. And I can hear the kids on the court. And I hear my son, who's 8 years old at the time, verbally assault and undress a kid. And immediately in that moment, I said, "Thank you, God. That's the reason I put that basketball court there." Because I was able to walk outside, grab him, bring him inside, sit him down and say, "Man, you can't talk to people like that. I don't care how frustrated you are." "Well, you do it." You're right. I do it. And I will never do it again. And so I vowed at that moment to change the tyrannical behavior because it impacted my children and wounded them. And I think a lot of guys are, like you said, you're scared to wound your kids. Man, it's going to happen. When you do it, be the healer. It's okay to do something not indirectly that wounds your child, but go heal that child as well. And that's what they'll remember.
Ooh, that was, man, oof, that was a lot. That was a lot of goodness in that. And I don't even know where to go next, but the question on my heart is talking about relationships and the husband-wife relationship. Because I feel like you've been on both sides of this, having been married and divorced and then remarried. I'm curious for your perspective on how you honor your wife, because I feel like there is a lot of men who take the mindset that the wife is supposed to serve the husband and it's supposed to be the subservient relationship. But I think they miss the rest of it, where the husband is supposed to honor the wife, right? Like God honors the church. Mm. So I'm just curious for your perspective and your, your perspective on that, and just kind of talk me through that.
So I will say something that I probably never said on a podcast, and I'm going to tell you, air the dirty laundry, because if this story can help other men, that's the whole point here. So I can put it as eloquently as I can. My wife is a goddess. I fantasized about a woman like her. I'm not going to lie. In my younger days, a blonde bombshell, just literally a bombshell. I've never gone anywhere with her in public where she doesn't get complimented on the way she looks. Our intimate relationship is elite. It's on another level. She is the best partner. I mean, it's immeasurable. Our physical relationship, our intimacy is elite. Imagine, as a guy, in my father wound and in my generational curse of adultery, sex was important to me. Physical touch was something I never got from my dad. And it's crazy how it manifests itself into needing to feel enough, appreciated through sexual experience. And so my first wife was sexually abused as a child. She had no father figure in her life. My ex-wife is a deep father wound. from a present father who was an alcoholic, abusive. That molestation crippled her for her entire life. Our intimacy was affected by that. So my sinful flesh, allowed that to dismantle my relationship. I've never seen a man honor a woman other than my great grandfather. I was a boy most of the cultivation of the relationship with my great grandfather. Every other relationship on both sides of my family, the men were tyrannical or a doormat, and everybody walked on. There was no in between. That's what I modeled. So I allowed my ex-wife's father wound and childhood intimacy wound to affect our marriage, which is why I stepped out. Complete piece of crap, okay? My ex-wife was a great, nurturing, homemaker, gentle spirit. She followed me even when I wasn't followable. She was a great mother. God brought a woman into my life that brought me every physical desire that I could have ever wanted. She has every trait that my ex-wife didn't. She also doesn't have a lot of the traits that my ex-wife does have now. You're never going to find a perfect wife. And that is the testament to our faith. Can we lead someone who's flawed when we're flawed? You can't do it without honoring them. So the moral of that story was I ruined our marriage because I was sinful flesh and I just let my father wound just take my life over. What I didn't tell you was that my current wife also had the same childhood trauma as my ex-wife. Inappropriate, illegal relationships. My current wife, you would never know. You would never know that. The one difference, she had a great dad in her life. The one difference. The same exact scenario happened to them when they were kids, inappropriately. My ex-wife, it wounded her and still does to this day. My current wife, you wouldn't know. And the difference is the man in her life. And then her dad died in a car accident when she's 22 years old, got killed by a drunk driver. So that's a different type of father wound. But the moral of that story is the patriarch of that home, no matter what lens you're being looked at through, husband, lover, leader, protector, provider, father, daddy, prophet, priest, king, you have to honor in order to receive honor. And it also unlocks. By honoring my wife, I get the absolute best out of her. When I dishonor her, I get the absolute worst. This is the term I used yesterday, and I want this to really resonate on what the answer to your question was. What I'm working on now is mastering the art of washing feet. I want to be a professional foot washer. The most followable man in the history of our existence, before he went up and died on the cross, washed the people's feet who followed him. Washed the people's feet who didn't all entirely believe who he said he was. Got down on the floor and washed their feet. So if you want a relationship where you're honored, your love languages are met, become a professional foot washer. In your home, outside your home, in every area of influence you have, be willing to get on your knees and wash feet. And so, while, don't get me wrong, my wife and I's relationship is not perfect. We still get in disagreements. I still can become tyrannical. That is my sinful flesh. That is who I am in the flesh. Without my relationship with God, I can't be the man she needs me to be. And so everything around that starts with honor because if I don't honor her, I don't get honored. And so I can't feed that flesh ego in any way, shape, or form without it starting with honoring her. And so I know it was a long answer, but um, I guess on these topics that I'm passionate about, man, I can get pretty long winded.
No, that's so good. I think it it speaks a lot to the ego and pride and masculinity that too many people carry around, where they're too proud or they're too egotistical to serve or to wash feet or to honor somebody else.
Yep. Yep. Look, it's, read every leadership book in the world, whether it's of the spirit or not. Um, they're going to tell you got to sell your goals, vision, and operation to your staff. You got to sell what you're doing to your employees. You got to sell what you're doing to everybody, internal customer, which is your staff. Well, if you apply those same principles to your family, guess what? Your work staff, they only see you for X amount of hours a day. They don't get to see you naked. My wife and kids have seen me naked. And so they ain't buying what my mouth is selling. They're buying what my body is selling, what my actions are saying, what my consistencies are selling. So if I'm selling that I'm a reformed man in my home, that's it. That starts with internal change followed by external action. So if I'm changing internally, how do I share that with my family? By telling them, hey, dad's great. Dad's following Jesus. Dad's doing this. No, I do that by honoring them. It draws them in, and then they are interested in this transformation. If it's all about me, if an inward action, an inward emotion gets followed by an inward action, this transformation goes nowhere. So it's an inward emotion, allowing God to come into your heart and transform the way that you think, followed by an intentional action to draw your family in so that they will buy into what your transformation is based on. And that's honor. That outward action is honor.
Yeah, that's so good. I see so many people who want to try and demand that honor and respect, right? They have that vision for the company or the family, and then rather than put in the effort, right, they just want to demand that people follow it because they are the boss, they are the CEO, they have the title, and it might work for a little while, but it just doesn't pan out for the best ever.
Nah, it's true. It's totally true, man. I would say demanding respect and commanding respect, those words get tossed around and they get confused, but commanding respect is by doing what you say you're going to do and being who you say you're going to be, and then drawing others in because of your consistency. And that is how you command respect. Demanding respect, you might get it, but you're going to get it from the wrong crowd. You're going to get it from the wrong people. You get it in the wrong way. And so I think the most, what do they call it nowadays? Like a power move, or, what does winning look like? In my mind, now that I've been around real winners, being vulnerable is a power move. Getting on a podcast and giving you unbridled testimony, letting people know why my podcast is called No Half Cakes, letting people know why I do what I say I'm going to do. That's the power move. Saying, hey, here's where I failed. I'm going to be vulnerable so I can set the captives free, because there are men out there that are struggling with half cakes in their life. That's a power move. That I have no idea what Jim Sabellico's net worth is or anything like that, because it's irrelevant to me. I look at you and I see a man of integrity, a man who said, hey, I royally screwed up. Here's all the details. World, hold me accountable. God's going to hold me accountable. And what God does is by honors that vulnerability by bringing the right alignments into your life. And that's a power move. Driving a Lambo, having a 9-figure net worth, man, I love that. Don't get me wrong. I want a couple vacation homes. I aspire. Those are on my vision board. I want those things as well, but I'm not willing to demand respect to get them. I want to command respect by being vulnerable because it's the only true way to change. It's the only way we can usher in God to do what we're not possible or capable of doing.
100%. And A, I receive that, so thank you.
Yeah.
And B, like I said before, I think there's nothing wrong with those things. There's nothing wrong with having a fat bank account, a nice house, a nice car, but those should be byproducts of your standards, of your values.
That's right.
Right? If you put the first thing first, you put the relationships first, the integrity, the vulnerability, the values first, right? You honor your relationships, you honor the business, you honor all the things that come before you, and do the work. Then those things come to you, and that's cool. But if that's the first thing you're chasing, you might get it, right? You might wind up on a beach in Punta Cana. You might wind up standing in front of a half a cake. Like, you're going to come to a point where you realize that's not what success is. And, it's a lesson that I think doesn't get shared enough, right? It's definitely hard to quantify for most people what success is, because it's easy for us to share a picture of the house, the car, the screenshot of the bank account on Facebook, and people like it and we feel valued. But it's much harder to post a picture of vulnerability or integrity or character that's not going to get the likes, comments, and shares. Right? So people don't do it because they're after that, and they're afraid of being judged, they're afraid of being criticized, they're afraid of being, thought less of. Yeah. But man, the more people who are willing to stand up and go first, right, who are willing to have that conversation, does unlock other people to feel the same way. And I think that's when we're going to get to a spot where people feel comfortable, right, honoring relationships and looking at integrity as a cool thing, right? Not, what kind of car you drive, but how do you honor your relationships?
Absolutely.
And I look forward to that.
The rule of thumb that has worked for me is when the world says you're winning, announce the loss. And when the world thinks you're losing, savor the victory. Announcing the victory is easy. Everybody does it. Savoring it is a different thing. Appreciating it, living in gratitude, celebrating the victory with your family and the ones that matter, or what doesn't get celebrated. The minute, we, men, women, leaders, get some financial success, first thing we want to do is celebrate it instead of savoring it and appreciating it with those that matter. The unlocking portion of that is, when the world says you're winning, announce the loss, because there's something underlying. I mean, I just, almost everybody I've seen, we're living in a world right now where about every business guru that I have followed, and not a guru, let me announce that, successful, monetarily successful people, I've seen probably 5 or 6 big time influencers over the last couple of years that are making waves in the business space profess their faith in Jesus. I don't believe that's an accident. There's no Hebrew translation for coincidence. I believe that because arguably, when you get to the most monetarily successful part in your life is when the wound becomes exposed the most. Money makes you more of who you already are. So if you had a wound that was deep, that affected your life when you had 10 grand in the bank, when you got to 10 million, that wound is just deeper and more easily exposed. So when the world says you're winning, let everybody know why you're not. And then that's the key to getting healed. God's going to put the right people in your life by being vulnerable. But when you're losing, about the worldly standards, you're probably doing pretty good.
Yeah, I'd agree to that. So I got 2 more questions for you. First one being, if you've got one piece of advice to give to someone, some actionable piece of advice, whether it's mindset or something they can go out and do today to live a more full and meaningful life, what would that piece of advice be?
I would give 3 bullet points. Apply this in every area of your life. 3, number 1, you have to have a ridiculous sense of self-awareness. You have to know who you are, but more importantly, you have to know who you aren't and what you aren't. Number 2, you have to be able to process information at a rapid rate of speed. I'll unpack that by saying, if there's something going on in my home where one of my family members is not acting, feeling right, dude, I'm Inspector Gadget. We're gonna open that up. Like, what's going on? I need to be able to process information at a rapid rate of speed. When my wife gives me a 1-sentence answer, if I'm expecting a paragraph, I can't just let that lie. I got to process that information and immediately act on it. And then the third is, you have to have a maniacal sense of urgency. I don't mean rush and hurry through life. I mean that if nothing is important to you, what's the point? So if you can take a deep sense of self-awareness, who you are, what you aren't, apply that to every area of your life, become able to process information at a rapid rate of speed. Get in the Word, get in a book, educate yourself, become intelligent to processing information. It doesn't mean you have to solve trigonometry problems. Be able to process information at a rapid rate of speed, and then operate in a maniacal sense of urgency. And you will be, in my opinion, you will be successful in every area of life.
That's a good word. Last question. Favorite type of birthday cake or cake in general? What is it for you?
Ooh, man. That's a good
It's the hardest question. Gets everyone every time.
It's a good question. Because I'm afraid to say something and come back after and be like, wait, because I don't eat cake so much, but I love cake. Well, that's probably why I don't eat it a lot. But man, that's such a good question. I would say I like a layered cake with some type of caramel pecan filling. No chocolate icing. I'm not a chocolate guy. So I would say white buttercream or whipped cream icing, white cake with a good crunchy textured caramel pecan filling. If that's detailed enough for you, it's probably my favorite cake.
It is pretty detailed and it does sound pretty good.
I'm gonna go search my house. There's zero chance I have any, but now it's on my mind.
I love that. So thank you for all that you shared today, for your vulnerability, transparency, for everything that you've shared with us here. This has been impactful for me. I know I've taken a lot of nuggets out of this, and I'm sure everyone else feels the same. So thank you. I truly appreciate that and your being here today. It means a lot to me. If people want to get in touch with you, follow you, find you on the webs, where might they do that?
Oh man, I'm pretty easy guy to find. Maybe hard to spell my last name, but Travis Terrebonne. I don't have I'm not a coach or anything like that. I don't have a platform. I share my life, the good, the bad, and the ugly on social media. Instagram and Facebook would be Travis J Terrebonne. And then my business is Gin Gators. I'm in the power generation industry down in South Louisiana. So my thought process behind the word was like an alligator and a generator had a baby. And so we are Gin Gators Power Systems. You can check us out on the web. I'm a huge industry advocate, and my goal is to change the industry one entrepreneur at a time. So that would be the way you would contact me for business. So gingators.com, at Travis J Terrebonne on Instagram and Travis J Terrebonne on Facebook. Hit me up. Look, man, I get a lot of questions. People just ask me random stuff because that's part of putting yourself out there. So I'll take all the random, man. Bring it on.
I love it. Love that, and I love you, brother. Thank you for this time, and we'll see you soon.
I'm really excited to develop our relationship this year, Jim. I honor you for not only pursuing me, but be persistent about it. And it's amazing how God works, because now we're in a brotherhood together, uh, embarking on a covenant relationship for hopefully the next 20, 30 years. So I appreciate you, man. No Half Cakes really impacted me. Everything that you do, the way you communicate, I believe you speak with a commanding sense of solace about yourself, and I'm envious of that. Um, I love your intentionality. I love your consistency. I love your willingness to be vulnerable. I honor you in so many ways. I think you are the epitome of Joshua 1:9, being strong and courageous. So I love you, man. I pray that our relationship really flourishes.
I appreciate that, man. It means a lot.
All right, Jim. Have a good one,
Thank
brother.
you.